Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Manon Bolliger, a retired and deregistered naturopathic physician with 30 plus years of experience. Here you will discover engaging and informative conversations between experienced healers, covering all aspects of healing, the personal journey, the journey of the practitioner, and the amazing possibilities for our own body and spirit.
So welcome to the Healers Café, and today I have with me Tanya Baldwin, and she goes by the name of a cosmic trauma priestess who gently guides you through your trauma, igniting your self-love and empowering you to step into your light. Now, she has a combined education of nursing, so education in nursing, with also lived experience and healing with ancient practices, metaphysical, spiritual, and holistic aspects of healing. So, and you've also done plenty of work in trauma with well-known founders like Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, Stephen Porges, and Pat Ogan. And well, I think that's probably enough as an intro. And it's one of my subjects of, well, I guess, trauma is trauma, right? And we are definitely in an age where uncovering trauma is, and getting past it especially, is what so many people are being called to do. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I agree. It's nice to have trauma starting to be talked about more. I think that some people don't really understand trauma fully yet. Somehow there's a negative connotation to it. So it's almost by accepting that you've experienced trauma, that you're somehow saying your parents were bad. So I keep trying to explain to people that's not the case. There's lots of people that did their very, very best and wanted to, raise children in healthy, wonderful ways, but they weren't taught either, or they had traumas that they weren't aware of. So it is nice to see it being talked about more and people working on it more.
For sure. So how did you end up, well, first going into nursing, and when did you, it's two questions, going into nursing, I guess that's 20 years ago, but how did you get to understanding that trauma is a thing, like how, from your experience, or how did that all come to be?
So I jokingly, not jokingly, I shouldn't say, I talk about how when I write my book, I'll probably call it From Trauma to Trauma and Back Again, because I knew that I'd experienced a lot of trauma as a child because of the type of traumas that I have experienced. When I was 15, I was kidnapped and held captive. I have no memories of that experience beyond, a few on the bookends of the experience. So that you experienced trauma, but I really felt that I was managing it really well because according to society's standards, I was successful, I had children, I had a partner. So I didn't really see that I was traumatized. I was very, like I had a 4.0 in nursing. I, won scholarships and awards, and, I was the director of nurse, like I was climbing through the nursing ranks as well. So there wasn't anything socially that was standing up for me. It was later on in life, as I got to a certain level with my nursing career, I was under an enormous amount of stress and my health started to fail, and I ended up getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I struggled with that at work for a while, and in the end I decided to take a medical leave of absence to deal with that because there was talk of me getting into a wheelchair, and there was it was just really, really hard to manage the position when I kept having cognitive difficulties, or even just making it around the hospital when my gait was impaired. So when I took the time off for that, that's when my trauma came crashing down around me. And the fact that I had not resolved it, I really ran away from it through education and work. So a lot of us that are workaholics, busyholics, people that can't shut down, It's because, maybe you grew up in a home where there was a lot of emphasis put on achievement, and you equate your worth with what your title is or what your money is or what all these other things. And then there's other times where it's just, you're in high functioning anxiety, and high functioning anxiety is a beautiful thing for the corporate world or for society, because you have a lot of people that just don't shut off. And it's just go, 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 go. Yep, I'll work overtime. Sure. And people pleasing on top of that, then you just have the recipe for a beautiful employee who will burn themselves out, but could be masking an underlying unresolved trauma. So when I took the time off to deal with my MS, I was diagnosed then with anxiety, depression, panic disorder, complex PTSD, and functional neurological disorder. So I did the traditional methods. I went and I saw a psychiatrist, I saw a psychologist, I saw a neuropsychiatrist because of the MS component. I did occupational health, rehab. I did everything I could because I had to get back to work. I had to get back to that. And nothing was really working. I was doing all kinds of medications, up, down, in, out. And the only thing that ended up happening was that I was sedated to the part where I wasn't able to really function. I didn't feel safe driving, and, I still wasn't sleeping. I was having a lot of, I call them black mares. So all feeling no future, which is probably just repressed memories coming forward. And because they're repressed, even in the nightmares, they're repressed, but I have all the feelings and sensations of fear. So I went on that about a year and a half, and I wasn't getting any better. I felt like I was losing my life more and more. So then, luckily enough, because of my knowledge in nursing, I also was able to advocate for myself. So when they wanted to switch some medications around, I said, no, we're going to start taking them out, and we're going to see how I feel as we decrease them. Because at this point, I'm not functioning. So I'm not adding more. I'm going to take them out. So I eventually weaned off all of my medications. And I also did what actually saved me from my trauma the first time, which was that high functioning portion of, I'm going to be a good student, and I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to just, go, go, go. But I decided to become a master of trauma. I was like, if I've got, this is like, if I had Crohn's, I would learn everything I could about Crohn's. But I don't. I have trauma. So I'm going to learn everything I can about trauma. So that sparked that. I followed Gabor Mate and Peter Levine and Stephen Porges and all of the greats. And I started attending webinars and workshops and devouring books and learning and learning and learning. And then I also started on a holistic path. Radically changed my life. I stopped watching TV. I did a negativity detox. I changed my diet. I started exercising more. I started meditating, and I became absolutely obsessed with the now. And through those practices, I actually healed everything. So years later now, I've been cleared of MS. The only time I have to have another MRI is if I, for some reason, start to develop symptoms at some time. I take 0 medications and followed by no doctors, and I live a happy, healthy life. And I live naturally. I still don't turn the TV on unless I'm singing. I do a lot of karaoke. That's my fun stuff. So karaoke, and I learn, and I interact with nature. I try to live more seasonally and, follow the patterns of the moon. I'm a woman. Women have a 28-day cycle. So following the patterns of the moon actually makes sense for us.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity. Every month there's a new moon to set habits and intentions or goal set. And there's also a full moon to release things that aren't working for you. So, So yeah, that's how I got to here anyway. Once I went through all of that experience and I came out the other side, I was like, I have to help other people. Like this is what I have to do. And also on the outside looking back in, I realized how toxic my job was, how toxic the role was, and the workplace, and a lot of society really.
Yeah. When you start looking back, it's quite, it's quite shocking. And also, as we're going through it, you don't notice it as much because you accept it as a kind of normal, which
Yeah.
it's interesting now where, when some people want to go back to normal, it's like, whoa, no, time to explode what's actually underneath and holding us all back, whether we know it or we don't. So yeah, very interesting. Well, that's quite a path too, because when you're 20 years as a nurse, you are helping people. So at least that's the intention. Maybe the things given may not have been that helpful, probably in many cases, but there's still a lot of love, except for, I would say, in the later years of nursing, where so many nurses felt like they were just administrators. They were so busy filing, everything, that the patient was like the last one on the, to get any care.
I struggled with that with my nurses too. So working in management, you understand what the complexities of the role are and the ever growing responsibilities, but yet there's no more nurses brought in, but it's, we're going to delineate these things and we're going to say housekeeping you have to strip the entire room of everything, and then housekeeping will come in and clean. And I'm like, why are you putting that on the nurse, who is the more expensive person in the field? Why are you putting that on her responsibilities when her job should be patient care? But they would do that, or they would say, now we're gonna bring a tray of food down with all the trays on it, and you have to distribute them to the rooms. We're not taking them in the rooms, and you have to clean them all up and put them back on the tray. Why are we doing that? The nurse should be nursing, and why are you making the nurse do food stuff? Why are you making the nurse do cleaning stuff? And so they add that onto their plate, and then you change things. Like, I did accreditation at the hospital. I was the lead accreditor before I left. And, when you're going through accreditation, and it's like patient and family-centered care. So there's extra requirements along that too, making sure that we're honoring the patient and the family. We're involving the family in with the patient care. And then the families have more demands, because it's very much, this is my one person, and I expect everybody to be doing everything for this one person. And you're like, but I have 14 others that are just as important to their 14 families. Right? So it was challenging. And the same thing in management, right? So I mean, when our one nurse left, we were trying to replace her with another staff member, and we opened it up obviously internally first. And one of our senior nurses came and said, there's no way I'm going to leave the salary that I'm making to work in management for like a few bucks more an hour, but I don't get any overtime, but I'm expected to work like lots of overtime because I'm in management now. Like, what sense does this make? Like, you don't get, I'm going to lose work. I'm going to lose pay to do this job and more responsibility. And you look at it and it's like, I'm not just managing the nurses. I'm on the occupational health and safety team, part of, the wellness program. I'm part of this. And so you have so many things that you're responsible for that you're overburdened. And so, it's a very toxic system. And I don't know the changes. I know the changes that could be made, but
I mean, it's an interesting position to be in too, because when you go through your own healing crisis, when finally there is time, to do the work that's necessary, that as opposed to following this prescription and that one and this and that. And to me, it's very pharma led rather than really led by the heart and what the human person needs. I don't know how your healing was, but I know I was also provided a few diseases. MS was one of them, to get through, to be able to deeply understand what the process is, and how you heal. And amazing how trauma will surface for real, because it must be healed. I don't know that we can even separate who we are, like, from the manifestation of the diseases, if we haven't looked at that aspect of it.
Oh, trauma is an underlying cause of so many illnesses. And, I think even of just my digestive tract and, like prior to, having everything come apart, you get the IBS diagnosis and you're like,
Right.
okay, irritable bowel syndrome, awesome. But then when you're looking at it from the other side, you're like, no, it wasn't. It was because I had anxiety and depression. And when I was in a highly anxious state, my body is in fight or flight. And what are we not concerned with when we're in fight or flight? Digestion, any part of it. So you're stuck in constipation while you're in fight or flight. And then we would go into depression. And a lot of times what would happen is then your body's just doing it's just letting it go. It's just releasing.
Right.
So you're like, I don't have IBS. I just have trauma that I need to heal. And when I heal through my trauma, well, wow, now that's all healed too. I lost, 80 pounds in the process. I have no problem keeping the weight off. It's because my mind is different, right? And
Right.
there's just so much of it out there, whether, just so much of it. And you're right. You step back at it and you look and you're like, when I went to the doctor and, here's anxiety, here's depression, here's your pills, here's your pills, here's your pills. It wasn't, what is your diet like? Like, are you eating a lot of processed foods? Are you getting a wide variety of nutrients within your diet? And how much are you eating? Too much? Are you eating too little? Like, what is your diet like? What is your sleep like? Right? Are you getting good quality sleep? And different ways that you can do that. Do you shut off your phone about an hour before you go to bed so you can lessen the blue screen? Right?
Yeah.
What are you doing right before? Nobody asks those questions. And that's the part of nursing that bothers me, is that we're not in there being proponents of health. We're in there being, like we're going to try to like, I don't know, do something about the disease, but it's not, let's do something about your health.
Manon Bolliger here, and I want to thank you for taking actionable steps towards engaging your healing journey and helping others discover their path by watching, sharing, subscribing, and reviewing these podcasts. Every review and share helps spread the word, these different perspectives and choices and options for healing. And to thank you, I'd like to invite you to sign up to my free 7-sequence email tips on health and healing for everyday life. You can go to healerscafe.com tips. Thanks so much. No, exactly. Well, I think it's become so evident nowadays. It's like, it's screaming. If people haven't figured this out yet, well, one, the entire, pandemic not being about health to begin with, but that's a side point. It's also, chasing symptoms and naming things, and now we have the government wanting to throw all this money to our broken healthcare system. It's like, no, if you give money in the same systems with the same mindset, you're going to recreate exactly the same thing. And we're not going to get any further, right? We have to really look at what was our experience of all this. How did we, some of us escape the indoctrination and understand really what is going on between this division of a system that is like sickness management or really health and healing, and they have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
It's not even the right environment for it.
It's not. I do manifestations and affirmations and stuff like that. And the one that I write down is that hospitals are just for traumas, right? Like literally.
Yeah, physical trauma. Yeah.
And you get understandable, right? We can't do anything if you've got a big gash in your arm. I'm not going to do Reiki on you. No. you're gaping, right? I'm not going to do that. But it's incredible. And bringing up the pandemic, right, and looking at that, and that was one of the things that I was like, if they really cared, they'd be talking about, hey, are you eating right? Are you taking vitamins?
Exactly.
Are you taking zinc? Are you getting fresh air? Are you walking? What's your mental health like? How toxic are you in your mindset?
Yeah.
None of that was. And the first thing they did was close down the gyms, which
That's right.
But have you been to a gym? Because I've been to a gym and I know what I'm doing. I'm spraying down every piece of equipment before I sit on it. Like there's a lot of hygiene that goes on within a gym facility as it is, right? But they took away the things that actually help our health.
Right.
First. So that's
and stop, in some places you couldn't go to the beach, you couldn't walk down certain, forest paths, like, it's, and the liquor stores were open all the time. They were, I guess, what was the word that they used in Canada? It was essential services.
Now, there's only one reason why I can actually support that. And that's because if we had to if we had to close the alcohol down, we would have had a lot of alcoholics all of a sudden in DTs or worse, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Would have caused a lot of health concerns having just immediately stopped that out there. But I do agree with you, like that, having those things available, but not other services, like that's just, it shows more of the hypocrisy of the whole entire thing.
Yeah. And also how the boards, whether it was the naturopathic board or it was the medical board, that, no other treatments, including common sense, are you exercising? What's your mental state? What's your vitamin D levels? Basic stuff like that were actually punished. And we were forbidden to do that because you're supposed to follow the narrative, right? And so I think it's kind of anyway, we're getting off trauma a little bit here, but so we'll go back to trauma. But talk about trauma. I think one of the reasons trauma is discussed so much now is because this stepping away from broken systems has allowed trauma to surface on so many levels, and people are triggered on so many levels now, which you could say, oh, well, it's bad, it's too much. But most people going through trauma and associated named diseases see the light at the end of the tunnel and understand how it helped them and served them, So maybe you could speak to that a little bit. You're kind of waking up to realize that this is not happening to you, but for you.
Oh, yes. Like I've looked back through, and I think that's a huge part of what allowed me to integrate all of my trauma is that I actually look at it like the more trauma that I experienced growing up just means that I can speak to a broader group of people. I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to have my life threatened. I know what it's like to be kidnapped. I know what it's like to have every form of abuse. I look back at my dad abandoning, my parents being divorced by the time I was 3 as one of the best things that could have happened to me because my dad was a very bad man. And I can't imagine how my life would have changed had I, had he been part of my life longer. And, in the end, I'm here, I'm who I am because of that, no matter what, and it doesn't, hang on, I got to hang this up. I had to tell him I'll call it. It's my son calling. He's like, it's your 5 o'clock personal time. Not today, son.
That's nice.
He calls me all the time. He can hang on. But yeah, waking up and seeing like how complex that all is. But the only moment that matters is right now. And in this moment, I'm that stuff's not even alive anymore. I'm the only one that kept it alive for all those years. One of the people that perpetrated me is already dead. So I was torturing myself. I was participating in my own struggling, and that was a hard thing for me to learn. And there was actually one moment in my healing journey when I was, I got kind of sad because I was healing at that point, and I was like, I don't have a crutch anymore.
Right.
That mindset popped up momentarily when I don't have a crutch anymore. Like if I want a day off work, like I have to lie or I have to actually be sick. Like I don't have mental health to I can't sit there and say, I don't want to go to work because I'm depressed today. Like I can't say that anymore. It's one of those weird moments where I was like, that was a weird, that's a real victim mindset to think that you need to have a crutch.
Yeah. Well, how accepted it is as well, right?
Yeah.
It's the norm.
Yeah, it is. And people don't there's so much toxicity in society that people don't recognize as being toxic, right from our relationships, but we don't realize how that the world outside is a reflection of how we feel inside, and that, you know, so long as I don't think I'm good enough, I'm going to just keep going and finding experiences to prove to me just how I don't think I'm good enough. I'm just going to magnetize that stuff to me. So waking up to that was a huge thing, and saying like, I was fully participating in my own struggling. As I saw the flag in the relationship, probably 1.5 years in it, I waited till 8 to decide to leave it. And the flag stopped appearing out, like it kept coming up, but it took me that long to say. So I look back and I say, I literally participated in that. I saw that flag. I said, yeah, we'll wait for the next one. And I waited 8 years to find enough of them. So we do that. I think it's, you know, taking ownership for the fact that, you know, you're the one that's creating it for yourself. And you have, at any moment, you can make the choices to change that and go a different route.
I think, you know, you really hit on the idea of choice, that you can make the choice. And I think that that's just not one of the programs we've had. You know, it's like, you know, what do you mean? You could actually choose, you know, and that doesn't make you a bad person or not care about others. And, you know, which is quite remarkable. I remember I was seeing Byron Katie, and she said, well, you can either go in the dog cage with these rabid hounds, or you can close the door and look at them from the outside if you want to, or do something else with your life. You know, I was like, really, I can do that.
Oh yeah, I talked to my mom about it, and my mom's a 66-year-old. My mom's been working on her trauma. That's probably one of my favorite things about this whole experience, the ripple effects that it's had in my own life, and watching my mom at her age taking on healing her traumas and working on it. And it is what allows us to have a relationship, because if she chose not to change, I would look at her with the toxicity that she has, and it would be a limited.
Yeah.
But, you know, she's left her husband, her abusive husband of all these years. And she's, you know, this time's the last, I'm not helping him anymore after this. And I'm like, Mom, I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm like, because at this point in time, you've told me repeatedly, you're not. Is that at this point, you are making the honest choice to just participate in that. You are making the choice. And it's, if he comes and he natters at you and you say, no, 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 and then he keeps nattering and you go, okay, fine. He knows he won, and he'll keep doing it because he knows eventually his nattering will win you over. I said, you have to be firm and say no, and just keep saying no, and just keep saying no. And if you're not willing to, then you're actually choosing. You're choosing.
Exactly.
So,
it's a hard reality, but it's the truth. You know. Yeah. So we have very little time left. There's two things I still wanted to cover with you. One is that you have 5-day free events called Divine Healing Event. And your next one is going to be March 20th to 24th, but you also hold these monthly. So people can also look you up. We'll have all the links so people can join. And maybe you want to say a couple things about what you do during these 5-day events. And my second question, because it might just tie in, is, so it's a very interesting, I'll use the word interesting because that's the only word that's coming to mind, but cosmic trauma priestess. How did you put that together? And maybe that helps explain the 5 days. I don't know.
I'll start with the first question on the 5 days. So the 5-day event it's about igniting the inner healer in you using holistic or natural practices. So each day has a different theme. Day 1 is talking about food, because one of the first things that we can do to change our overall health and well-being is the food that we put in our mouth. 2, the second day is breathing, because there's so much power with our breath and what we can do for our bodies. Day 3, I talk about like connecting to the earth, grounding, earthing, meditation, and more, just becoming more aware of, you know, being in the present moment. On Thursdays, I talk about trauma and the different trauma modalities, to give an example of that, plus what I used within my own healing. And then on the final day, I talk about seasonal living and being more in line with the earth and working in those types of patterns. throughout this 5-day event. So it's really all the stuff that I use to heal myself and to keep myself healthy, and what I also use with my clients to work with them. Somebody in each one of the events, I give away one 3-month package with myself. For somebody that attends all 5 sessions and participates, they have an opportunity to win a 3-month package with me. The Cosmic Trauma Priestess, that came because I actually polled my followers and asked them what they think that I should be called. So I had an experience where I had somebody channel past lives, and I've apparently been a healer for ever and ever and ever. So the cosmic part came from that. Trauma is because that's what I deal with. And then the priestess part is because a priestess is somebody that ignites you. I'm not a doctor. I don't use my nursing title anymore. I consider myself to be retired from that. So the priestess is because I'm igniting the healer in you, and everybody has that healer in them. So I do a podcast, which is getting revamped and starting back up March 6th. That's called Divine Healing. And that's what it is talking about, is natural healing methods and how to, heal yourself, really. And I have a very special guest that's joining me on the March 6th. So I'm looking forward to that. He has an amazing healing story. So I look forward to showcasing what he's talking about. So yeah, that's where it came from, is they determined that that was the most suitable title for what I actually do with people. So
interesting. Yeah, because it's a funny combination of 3 words. I mean, I guess there's a lot of associations with all 3 of them, but I mean, titles, it's like a diagnosis in a sense. If it fits, it works. On some level, right? So, but I was wondering how you came up with that one. But anyway, very interesting. So I think our time is up. Maybe a last statement or something that I didn't cover that you wish I had asked you.
I really I try to work with people in 3-month packages. So I do multiple things. I have the Divine Feminine Healing Collective and the Divine Masculine Healing Tribe, where I do 5 sessions a month. They're $9 per session. So for $45, which is less than what you would pay for even one therapy session, you get 5 healing sessions with me. In the female one, we follow the patterns of the moon, and then I add an additional session in. With the men, I just call it Nights at the Round Table. And it's just a time for them to talk about male, it's purely male run. It's trauma, mental health, stress, or just health related topics from a male perspective, and it's just guided. And I also do work with adolescents. I offer their stuff at half the rate of what I do with adults. So same prices, but I extend it to 6 months. And I do empowerment, self-esteem, resiliency, help them just deal with bullying and anything that they're struggling with. So I have about 3 adolescent clients at this time. But
it's great. Okay.
Yeah. I'm busy.
Well, thank you so much, Tanya, for sharing your path and your experience. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on the show. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Manon Bolliger. Continue your healing journey by visiting thehealerscafe.com and her website, and discover how to listen to your body and reboot for optimal health.